Hi, everybody. I'm Justin from Toolpath, and this is Chips and Tips. And with me today is the one and only Chris Zappettini.
Yo, what's going on?
If you
Oh,
don't know who Chris is, shame on you. Go look him up on the internet. But co-host of the Within Tolerance podcast, guest on many other podcasts, and one of the best AEs in the country right now in the
yeah,
U.S.
thank you. Quite the Venn diagram. I would think of people that are listening to this and not listening to it. Intolerance would be pretty wild.
Yeah, probably. Okay, today we are going to be talking about tool library theory and debating about the best way and maybe the one and only way that you should be setting up your tool library.
Hmm.
So I guess
Not a
let's get ready for
controversial
that.
topic at all.
Yeah, let's get ready for the hate comments that follow up.
Hmm.
All right, why don't we start with this, Chris? You've been in a lot of shops of various different
Right.
sort of progressions of how their tool library is set up. What do you think are the biggest problems people run into?
I mean, really, having one at all. You know,
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that's it is. I mean, I think it in our like generation of like cam programmers and shop owners and whatever, everybody kind of like hand wrings about like how to do it at all. And people have libraries, like I don't know, like Devin Bedoni, who we were just with last week. Yeah, he
Hmm.
has a tool library, and people like, I mean, his is very, very good. But it's like, oh, can it be better? Whatever, whatever. And then you go to these shops that are making 50, $100 million a year, and they don't have a library at all. Like, like 75 CNC machines that, and like they're like a bunch of Mazeks, a bunch of Haas's, whatever, and they're making the same type of parts all the time, and they don't have anything, nothing at all. Um, so like, I think just having one to start with puts you ahead of like quite a bit of places. And like, so number one, having one at all is big.
Okay.
Number two,
So
like the, go ahead.
before we go past number one, I think it's worth just sort of setting a baseline there. So there is a class of programmer slash machinist out there that literally has no library. They
Yeah,
build up their tools from scratch every time. Like, oh, I'm going to use these tools, and they enter the tool information,
right.
which sounds like insanely inefficient to me.
Yeah,
And then on top of that, there's folks who have a tool library that just has the tools in it, but not the tools in holders.
mm-hmm.
And then there's a middle ground where people might build up tools and holders, but not put them in a library. But like every time they program, they like open up a similar file from the last time.
Right.
So it's kind of like an implicit library in the sense of like, well, these 7 tools are always in the files I program with, so I'll start there.
Yeah, and I don't like that one as much.
Right.
Um,
So, and I think I pretty firmly agree to this. Like, there should be an active choice to establish like a shared library for the entire shop.
right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. At the very, I mean, like, even if all you had was like as a baseline of, um, even if it was just the cutting tools with, uh, like cutting data in them, so like
Hmm.
some baseline of cutting data, that's a good place to start, you know. I think like if, I mean, I feel like this should be like this will be an ongoing thing, right? Or maybe we solve the world in this one episode, but like some assumptions that I would say is like the holder, like whatever holders you have are good enough. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you don't need power grip, you don't need like fancy hydraulic holders or heat shrink. If all you're using is side lock holders and ER collets or whatever, that's fine. As long as like frankly, like if you're going for it, as long as they're built how you in real life as you have them in cam, you're good.
Right.
That's like the critical aspect of it. You won't be able to maybe maximize your tool for that machine or for the cutting that you want to do, but if you the goal isn't like pure optimization of the cutting. The goal is optimization of throughput, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, that's you actually hit on two really important points there. First, you talked about cutting data, and I'm not sure everybody thinks about a tool library as encapsulating the cutting data.
Right.
So that's an important note that tool geometry is just one step, right? So, and in like the three axis world, there's an argument that like most of the time, you probably don't even need the holder modeled. When you go to
Right.
multi-axis, it's pretty strictly required.
Hmm.
I would argue that even in three-axis, you're much better off modeling the holder because for that small set of conditions where the holder might hit the part on some deep pocket or something.
Right. Anymore, like this was a worse thing like 5, 10 years ago, where
Mm-hmm.
you would like have to like physically actually model the tool yourself or the holder
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Now, I mean, especially like in Fusion, a lot of these companies are just putting there's just like a native Fusion library for
It's
certain
just like a
holders and certain
click.
cutting tools.
Right.
Like you don't really have
Right.
to do anything. The excuse of not having it, especially there's like multiple plugins now, like between Saunders, the NYC CNC, and the Fusion Essentials one, which I think the Fusion Essentials one is better. It gives you like a more true to life size, I found, by like
Mm-hmm.
by like a margin that was like surprising. It doesn't, I mean, it probably wouldn't affect you, but we found it at Send Cut Send when we were checking tool tool length in the CAM program, and it was
Mm-hmm.
bombing out. Even though the tool was technically built correctly, like with stick out and
Okay.
everything, our margin of
So it's like a
error,
gauge length thing. Yeah.
yeah, our margin of error on the gauge length was like what we saw in like how the script changed the size, which
Okay.
was very fascinating.
Okay, so I would say that you and I agree that as a baseline, a tool library should include a built tool with a holder,
Yep.
um, and cutting data, because like
Yep.
you said, the purpose of the tool library is to speed up the human, right?
Yes.
And also to make things more consistent across the shop. So
Right.
you should be putting presets or there's other they call it something else in other CAM systems outside of Fusion, but you
Yeah.
should be storing your cutting data in the tool library so that you don't have to think about and like go look at how you used it or guess or make it up on the fly.
Correct.
Okay. So I think that's like a pretty important baseline. I'm not sure that everybody would start at that sort of foundation of the library that we're talking about is tool plus holder.
Hmm.
And we do that, like, we argue that that should be physically matching the actual tool that's built, stick
Yeah.
out and everything.
Digital twin,
And
baby.
then, yeah, and then cutting data should be in there.
Hmm.
So if we take that as our baseline and you walk into a shop and you say, okay, we're going to start by getting you guys built up with a tool library, what
Hmm.
are the hurdles that people have? And maybe if they start with no tool library versus if they have an existing library.
Um, so I have two exam. I can go with like two actual examples of
Hmm.
shops that I've like fairly large shops that I've been in. One of them is like a multinational corporation, and the other one is like just national.
Hmm.
And we'll go with one of them, but they both use Mastercam, which is I think that's an interesting baseline there. And one of them had a tool library, one of them didn't. Uh, and and frankly, the one that had the tool library was a worse experience.
Hmm.
This is like a very interesting thing too. Is like a bad tool library is almost worse than no tool library at all, because if you have all these tools built up and they're like, oh, here's our tool library, you can use this to program, and then it makes the programming faster, but then those tools aren't built up all the time. Like they're like, well, when we got to the shop floor portion of it, they were like, well, yeah, I mean, we don't build up all these tools. We don't have every tool built up for every machine, and it's like, well, then why the fuck is it here? It took longer for them to build slash find the tools that were in the library than it did to just build the tools from scratch. And it's like, at that point, what are we doing? Which kind of like also is another point, like ABA, always be auditing your tool
Right.
library. Um,
Right.
and and so that was a fascinating one. They like had a very consistent, and like they did have like a spreadsheet with like tool IDs that they had like a running list of and everything, and they were trying to log it, and like that was good. and they didn't really build tools how they were in the library. And like the one time they did build a tool for me that was like the library, it wasn't correct and it like pulled out while it was cutting. The heat shrink
Oh,
extension pulled out of the heat shrink holder because the correct length of the quote unquote correct length of the extension to the tool library didn't provide enough engagement in the heat shrink holder, and so it just
okay.
pulled out, which was funny. Uh, and very cool. And then the other, so like that was one, and that was like a horrendous experience. The other one was they gave us like pre-existing files to like use as a baseline because we were like redoing everything, and we typically try to use like what they already have so that it's not like a massive change for the guys on the floor or whatever. And they're they just program how they program, and like it's every program starts at tool one, and whatever tool one is whatever tool one is, period, like for that program, not for the
Right.
shop. And so, and then when they go to the shop, they'll build the tools how they're supposed to be built, but then when they get to the machine, they just like kind of look, oh, what's available, and then they just start changing it, and then like, and if it moves to another
By like
machine, they do the same thing, and if it moves to another
editing the
machine,
G code.
huh?
When you
Yes,
say
they edit
changing
the
it, you
yeah
mean
they edit the
edit the
G
G
code
code. Yeah.
to so that everything matches, and then whatever. It's like, what is the point? I mean, it's like, so then you get to this point where cam doesn't match reality, and if it was ran on one machine, it has a different set of tool numbers than if it ran on a different machine, and whatever. And it's like, that is a whole different level of stressor, you know? And so trying to like, we're continuing to like work with them in a different facility, only one of them, where we kind of have like carte blanche over there, like this 3 Mazak horizontal line. And so our approach is now, like typically, is whatever we do going forward, this is the baseline of the tool library, and we'll start there, you know. And if we
Right.
the next parts we do, we'll build off of that, and then build off of that. If we bring more parts from other parts of the shop onto this cell, then we will reprogram it to work around this tool library, use the existing tools, and then build on that as we go.
So you identified a couple more issues there that I just want to call out.
Right.
ABA, always be auditing. I think that is a real challenge and a sort of a scare point, like a fear point for people
Mm-hmm.
when they think about tool libraries. There are some people out there who keep a very small number of tools built and then have like a number of holders and a number of tools, and they just build them on the fly when they need them. And then other people are, I think the sort of general meta of the machining world is moving toward like tool holders are cheap enough. It's the cheapest automation you can get. Just
Yep.
keep most of your tools built all the time.
Right.
But even so, even in both of those camps, there's a like reality that the tool library, you're always buying new tools. Sometimes you may have to like lengthen a tool, pull it out of the cot a little bit more. And
Mm-hmm.
so making sure that the library matches physical reality is a real sort of pain point about the tool library process.
Right. And if you're, I am in the camp of like, if you're modifying a tool, right, um, that should just be its own tool.
Sure. Let's
Not,
circle back to that one.
yeah.
Sure, sure. Okay. The other thing that you hit on there that I think gets a lot of discussion is the tool numbering scheme.
Right.
And so and frankly, like hand editing G code when it goes from one machine to another to renumber tools sounds insane to me,
It
like
is
crazy
insane.
insane.
And like people just live with that because that's just like how it's always been done. It's like, no, bitch, like you should just repost. Like if your post processor isn't good enough that you can post and just put it on the machine and fucking run it, you have a problem.
Right. So there's a bunch of like subtopics in there. There's like what tool numbers should you use? Should you use constant tool numbers? Then people get into like numbering schemes of like, oh, if 0 to 100 are my main tools, 100 to 200 are my drills, 200 to 300 are my taps. And then also there's the question of like, should tool numbers be universal across your shop, or could they change from machine to machine, or even program to program, right?
Right.
So that
Oh,
whole tool numbering thing is another thing that I think people get very focused on in the concept of a tool library. And
yeah.
the interesting thing is, I don't think that should be the problem that people make it out to be.
No, I agree. I think like anymore, I mean, talking with Devin or whatever and some other people, I don't like the, you know, these are my face mills. Like 1 through 10 or 1 through 5 is face mills, and 5 through 15 are roughing in mills for aluminum and whatever. I I I mean anymore it's like I think the probe should be tool number one, the first tool. Which seems like weird, but it's also like that scales a little bit better. If I have a 30 tool machine versus like a 330 tool machine, it's always one. And
Right.
that obviously like doesn't matter as much if you have a tool or a machine like a Hermela or anything with a Heidenhain really, where you can name tools, then it's probe. It doesn't
Hmm.
fucking matter. That's like a separate topic that probably should be with like Dylan or Flarg or somebody like that, or Rob. I think
Hmm.
that'd be fascinating. Because like that kind of changes the schema a little bit. But
Sort of, but that's actually my point, though, is that I actually think that the concept of the tool number, like
yeah,
T7 or T
right,
probe, if you're on HUD 9, is irrelevant. Not irrelevant, but is secondary to the concept of the tool library. I really
yeah,
like Devin's scheme. I like the idea, and you already said this. Like, if I have a tool and I'm going to extend it out of the collet, that's a new tool.
yeah,
So I think that every tool in your library should get a unique ID.
right,
And we don't have to worry about exactly how you implement that, but my recommendation is like a 4-digit number.
yeah,
Most shops aren't going to run out of thousands of tools when if they use a 4-digit number,
right,
and that should go in the description of the tool. And then what you can say is that like at that point, like how you decide to number them on the floor is kind of a separate issue, right? If you want
hmm,
to use a consistent numbering scheme or come up with your own system or just number them based on the pocket number, whatever you want to do is fine.
right,
But the main idea of the tool is a unique number.
yeah. I do. I'm like thinking about how we should like go about this, like, because some
Hmm.
of these are like whole episodes, like kind of in and of themselves. So I think maybe we
Sure.
just like blast through a bunch of topics and then like
Circle
drill down
back.
on separate ones like later
Yeah.
on. Because I mean, I was thinking about like the floating tools, and
Hmm.
it's like probe number one, floating tool pockets or whatever. That's like 2 through 20 or 30. Like use the front of it, and then
Right.
anything beyond that, just from a scalability standpoint. I've also like talking about it this week. It's like you kind of touched on this with do I have a running library that's for the whole shop, or
Right.
is it per machine or whatever? And I kind of think about it, I've been thinking about it more in like the purest like cell manufacturing type of
Okay.
situation, where it's like we go to companies that will have like 10 or 11 machines just running the same type of parts all the time, and that's like a cell, right? It's like you could have absolutely like a tool library that's only for those types of machines, and that
Hmm.
doesn't affect like a different section of the shop. Because like why would I, like my Haas vertical and my Matsura 5 axis, why would I want them to have the same tool library? It's very like it's limiting in two different ways, where like I'm building my 5 axis around reach and like variability, where it's like my vertical, I'm probably going more around with like shorter tools, so that I can have better rigidity and yada yada. It's like why would I have 4 or 5 inch gauge length in my
I mean,
vertical?
and
I don't need it.
they probably don't have the same. Even if they're both Cat 40 machines, they don't. They likely don't have the same
Same pull
RPMs,
stud.
rigidity, pull
Yeah,
stud.
it
Yeah.
it gets to a point of like, I mean, you take standardization like too far, where it's like
Right. Yeah.
everything needs to be the same. Like, well, I might use the same roughing in mill, right? I might use like the same half-inch AXFPS, but that's in like 4 inch long PG25 in or like 6 inch long PG25 in the Matsura, and it's in like the stubbiest, like the 3 inch PG25 and the in the Haas vertical.
Yeah, I mean, I ran into this problem early on because we have the Speedio and the Sile, and they're both BT30. They
Hmm.
have separate pull studs, so you're not really moving tools between them anyway. But forget
Yeah,
that for a second. The same 3 ACX FPS, the Sile I have is a single phase machine. It doesn't have much power.
right.
So I could stall the spindle with the 3 inch FPS. I have to cut very differently with that tool in the Sile than I do in the Speedio.
Hmm.
So what originally seemed like a shared library that I could move between machines, even ignoring the RPM differences, just doesn't work.
No.
So I think I can agree to that. That if you want to think about it on a per cell basis, or at least a machine by machine basis, that your library should probably be machine specific.
Hmm.
But material is an interesting one, and I go back and forth on this, and I've decided that I think it just kind of doesn't matter. You can put all your for a given machine, you can put all your tools into one library, or you can split them up for like aluminum and steel, whatever you want. Doesn't really matter there.
Right.
Whatever's like makes your life easier. I'm leaning a little bit more and more toward like one shared library, because there does tend to be like some tools that you like chamfer mills and drills that you'll kind of use everywhere,
All right.
for the most part.
Absolutely.
And that I feel like that breaks the like material specific library concept. You end up either duplicating tools or just knowing that, okay, I have to go get some tools from my aluminum library, or you end up with three libraries, like a shared library and a material specific one. But I could see the argument for material specific ones too, especially if you have a larger shop, you want people to know like which tools are safe to use.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think this falls on like I think a lot of things will always fall into the like always be auditing category, you know?
Right.
Because it's like do like ultimately there's no like I mean there is probably a quote unquote like strictly correct way to do this, but at the same time it's like start anywhere. You know, have like 1,000 libraries if that's what makes sense to you initially, but then it's like it's kind of goes back to like the just fucking cut aspect of this, which is live in it, you know, build something, live in it, and then like decide, is this how I like to do this, you know? You don't like I think that that kind of is like a weird like hand wringing pain point for a lot of people is like, well, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people like this that they don't want to implement anything until they've found like the perfect, you know.
Right.
I've literally
Right.
had somebody be like, "Well, I'm always looking for the best thing, the next like what's the best way to do it?" It's like, "But you haven't fucking done anything." So like, how do you know what's best? You haven't done a single thing yet. So like it's all make believe and like it just falls everything you could spend years developing a tool library quote you know what I mean like hyperbolically and then implement it and realize like oh it falls apart immediately and it's like what was all that time for you ran
Sure.
years without anything.
That is a key point though. There is a reality to like how much energy you've put into your tool library and how willing you are to like make changes going forward.
Right.
And so if you're just starting out, if you're either rebooting your tool library or don't have one, I do think it's actually really important practice to like limit the scope of that to
Yes.
something that you can play with a little bit. So you might either just pick one cell and focus on that, or even just try to do like, what are the 10 tools? I'm going to focus on a library for like my 10 most common tools or something.
Right.
Or maybe even just like, you know what, taps and drills. Like that's where my library for taps and drills. I'm going to start there, so that you can play with different ideas and get to a system you like.
Yeah.
And you mentioned always be auditing a bunch here. I think that's really important. One, to talk about like how the tool library translates onto the shop floor, but two, to circle back to this idea of giving every tool a unique ID. That ID should carry through because you need some way to audit what you're doing. And if you
Right.
have those IDs like in the posted code, then you have a way to like recover what's being used and then
Right.
figure out like what to audit.
Yeah, because can you talk about what you did for Devin
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and how like
so
and how that helped?
that was the insight. Yeah. Yeah. So, Devin is the one who I think has talked the most on his own podcast about that tool numbering system he came up with. And it basically boils down to every rotating assembly gets a 4-digit ID number. And that number is just separate, like independent from the number that you put it in the machine. And he puts it in the description in the Fusion tool. So I wrote some code based on our pre-tool stuff that can parse F3D files. And I just looked at like 10 of his Fusion files that he had sent me and pulled out like a histogram of how often he was using every tool. Now, for him, we were trying to look at like what tools should graduate from non-standard up to standard.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like the foundation of a process that is very auditable is that every rotating assembly gets a unique ID, so that you have some way to universally across, different programmers, different programs, different machines, whatever, however you've set up your library, identify what's getting used and what's not getting used.
Right.
And I think that's really critical because if you don't have some way to audit, then you won't audit. And if the
Mm-hmm.
audit process isn't relatively painless, then you won't audit.
Yeah. And then it becomes
So
a mess, and then it becomes fucking useless, and then it's like you get this like weird like false negative of like tool, we tried a tool library, it doesn't work, it's a pain in the ass, and it's like it's probably a you problem, you know? You
right.
just like the
But that's
implementation
why
was poor.
I think the audit is the primary reason why, not one of the primary reasons why that 4-digit ID number should change when you change the stick out of the tool.
Hmm.
I think you want to know, like, did I use the tool like in my library, or did I use some like customized version of the tool that's not my standard behavior?
Right.
And
Right,
you want
because
to know
I've
how
been,
often that's happening, right? So,
well, I mean, I can think of at least one customer where I mean, I've talked about this a bunch on with intolerance actually is like me and this guy Will, we would get into like fucking fights about this because he wanted tool 9 to be 1/8 inch in mill, period. Whether that was sticking out a half an inch or 1 inch or inch and a half or whatever, that was tool 9. And the guy on the and that's how he programmed for the horizontals, and the setup guys would just do it. Maybe, they would crash those machines quite often as a result of this. And then the other guy, there was on their robo drill, there was one guy, it was his basically, he retires in April, so TBD. But like the the if a tool came out, if it was like tool 9, he decided was like half inch stick out, 1/8 inch in mill. If it was built again, oh, that's 109, that's 119, that's whatever. Anytime it changed, he just created it himself and like had all the tools there. And the programmer hated it. And it's like, why? He's like, there's so many tools, it's asinine. And it's like, why? It's easy. Like that makes your life, it makes everybody's life easier. And it's safer for the machine. Like because you don't like there's no questions of, oh, did I like, because I've ran into this before, um where I started to go with this is with a customer, it's like, hey, we need this tool, we should stick it out further. And and the conversation around like, hey, make sure that your tool is sticking out this far, like so we don't crash, like just reiterating is like, it's just not worth it. It's just create another tool, right? Is like, this isn't, you have tool 17, we'll make tool 117, and that'll be a half inch longer, 1/4 inch chamfer mill, and then there's no questions about if it's sticking out the right way for the next one or this one, and you don't start to affect other like previous programs that are sticking out at like the incorrect length, or it was sticking out correctly before and it cut well before. Now you extended it going forward, and then you go back to these other parts, and now it cuts like shit. And what happened, and it gets so messy so fast. And I mean, like that's like in a somewhat like contract manufacturing production shop environment where you're like repeating stuff, but you know.
I mean, I think you and I can agree pretty firmly on that. Even on a small one man shop, nowadays holders are so affordable. There's really no reason, like, unless you're, whatever. I mean, if you got to make your part on a Sunday night or whatever, and it's the only end mill you have left, then fine. But
Yeah.
just buy an
80
extra
20
end
rule,
mill.
baby. 80-20 rule, you know?
Buy an extra end mill. Buy an extra holder. Don't change tool 7's stick out. Put tools, 117 in or whatever. There's really no reason, at least to reuse that 4-digit number,
Yeah.
because for all the reasons you said, you lose information for essentially no value, right?
Yeah.
So
I would say negative value even. Like
Negative value. Yeah,
it
yeah.
is like it costs you ultimately in the long run of like
To like to save like $150 on the cost of a new tool and new holder or something.
yeah, and in some cases it's even less than that. Like Haas's, I mean, depending on the tool holders that you use, this is where like the argument like, well, I use whatever. It's like, I mean, fuck off. The like, but like Haas makes tool holder like makes adding new tool holders like so affordable. It's kind of
Right.
insane. It's like, how am
Right.
I getting this this BT30 ER16 for like $15 or something
Right.
stupid, you know? You're like, what the
Right.
fuck is going on?
Yeah. But could you have okay, so if we agree like basically every tool goes in the library, if you have to change it, it's a new tool in the library.
Hmm.
Can you have too many tools in the library?
Yeah, I
Can you
do.
go too far?
I think that is like, yeah, you can go too far because like, well, again, that's a caveat of like, if if you're not going to build it, then it shouldn't be in the library. You know, if it's not going to stay built, at least one is available somewhere.
Right.
It like, and that kind of goes into like a whole other thing, but like, if it's not built and available, don't put it in the fucking library. That just lives in the, that is a non-standard tool. It lives in the cam file. Whenever that comes up, you have to like deal with that situation.
Hmm.
But like putting, because I've worked at a place like before I started ZC, we put every fucking tool we built, period, no matter what it was, went into the library.
Hmm.
Which again is like seemingly, oh, sick. This is like we're you're building a system, you're dialing in whatever, whatever. And every single time, almost every program, you would start using these tools that are like seemingly perfect, and it's like, oh, we don't have that. That's not like that's not built. Like that was for a job 2 years ago. We don't even have that shit in the building anymore. And it's like, well, why is it in the library? You know? And like having a like it's like the stock, like where you have stock standard, stock special type of shit where it's like, yeah, this is like a standard tool, but it's a like quote unquote standard tool, but it's not a built standard tool versus a standard tool that is built is like an interesting concept, you know?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Definitely for bootstrappers or people who are starting out and maybe don't have, 100 holders lying around.
Yeah.
I think the distinction between like tools that you are committing to be like willing to build at a moment's notice. So
Hmm.
you have like a stash of consistent ER holders and then a drawer of tools and you'll just put them together and
Hmm.
it'll be fine. But I think you're right that like every shop has that other drawer of like tools they bought for a specific job. Key
Right.
seat cutters, weird chamfer mills, super long reach lollipop cutters, whatever. And I think that especially when you're just starting out, like when you don't have the main sort of like tools you use every day, part of your library built, just completely separate the other part of it. Like, don't even worry about that. Call that a separate issue. You have a spreadsheet. Oh, like basically pretend like you're buying those tools in
Yeah.
the moment you need them,
Right.
buying them from your own drawer. Yeah.
This is a this is like an interesting thing because I was talking to Graham Francis about
Hmm.
like tool storage. You know, he's been really on
Right.
this tool storage thing,
Hmm.
and it's because like every tool that they have, it gets a unique ID. They've been doing this, whatever, whatever. And then like speaking about it, like going too far, it's like, well, we have all these tools and we're running out of space. And it's like, do you use all those tools all the time? Do they need
Right.
to be like organized in a way that you can get to them? Like are some of the, like you are a job shop and like it's, or I mean they do job shop work occasionally and they used to do it a lot
Hmm.
more, but like you have all these tools that you bought for a job that you put into your tool library and it hasn't, and it is organized and whatever, whatever, but like are you using them? You know, like do they deserve to have the space that that's committed to? Like I mean anymore, like shop space can be pretty valuable, you know,
Hmm.
like adding a toolbox is a decision. Like he is like making some pretty intense like the like putting a lot of effort into finding like the right tool solution because he like space is at a premium and is like what do I do with all these tools that I have, and like the Japanese mindset is like, do you need another box, or like, can you clean your shit, like,
Right.
do you, like, and that is, again, always be auditing. Always be
Yeah.
auditing. Like, I put this tool in the library, when was the last time I used it? Like, do I need, like, can this go from the main storage to, like, I just have a drawer full of fucking junk that I know is like here, kind of thing.
That's so Devin and I talked about that a lot, and there's some interesting work that I think Toolpath could do to help make that auditing process easier to like track what tools
Hmm.
you're actually using. But also sometimes there are simpler solutions. I actually forgot to do it before I left his shop, so I'll have to go back and do it for him. But you can just take a little piece of like colored electrical tape
Hmm.
and stick it on every tool, right? And
Right.
just tell people, hey, like take the tape off when you use the tool.
Yeah.
And then let's say you have like four colors of tape and you just rotate them once a week.
Hmm.
So every tool gets a piece of tape at the start of every week. And then, once a month you go and look at tools that have four pieces of tape on them. And you go,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I'm not using this very often. Let me move that into
Right.
long-term storage.
Yeah.
So there are techniques that I think people can use to like manage the sort of overgrowth of their tool library.
Hmm.
And as a general rule, I would say I actually like the idea of like kanbaning your tool holders. So,
Right.
and you brought it up, like people say, oh, I use Power Grip or I use, Shunk Tendo or whatever.
Yeah.
And not every shop can afford to just keep like a pile of those unbuilt, ready
Yeah.
to go. If you can, great. If you can run every tool in Power Grip, cool.
Yeah.
And shrink is another good example because that has to be for the holder or for the
Hmm.
tool, right? So it's really hard to keep a stable of shrink tools. Maybe you're lucky and you can keep like 1/8 inch shrink for all your micro milling or something.
Hmm.
But also just like keep some ER collets around for, or like hydraulics with the collet adapter or whatever for your build up random tools thing. And just don't be afraid to like, okay, this tool is graduating into my main library. I'll invest in the more expensive holder then.
Right.
So I think you could establish like just as a baseline, you could say like, okay, I'm gonna keep I'm always gonna keep 3 ER16 and 3 ER32 holders in this box. I'm gonna
Right.
Kanban that, and anytime one gets taken out, I got to order another holder.
Hmm.
And that gives you the ability to just build tools when you need them, and then you need a separate system to help you decide when some of those tools get broken down. But that does circle back to your point of always be auditing. When you break that tool down, it should probably come out of the library.
Yeah.
So there is a challenge there.
Yeah. It is. And like, and yeah, again, like, just starting is huge, like, because like it can seem very daunting on like how the auditing process. You kind of got to find your flow. Everybody's
Right.
workflow is so different. um
Right.
and that's where, like, we'll dive into that as we go, but like, it is just start somewhere and then figure out a thing that works, because just having a library to begin with is massive. It just, like, it you need it, right? Like, Toolpath requires it, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
And like, anytime we do a project for somebody, we consider, if they don't already have a good library, we consider whatever we're working on the start of the tool library, and like, that's where the baseline is. And like, just do it, because another one, like, I'm just thinking of like shops that we went to last year, and like, 220 tool DVF 6500s. These guys do like prototyping, like quick turn shit, whatever. Zero standard tools. Every setup is from scratch. We did get them into HWR 0 point stuff, because like, they're using shrunk vices. They'll probably continue to use shrunk vices, and like, we were gonna get them into like the shrunk 0 point stuff, but they don't have like a good enough quad plate, whatever, it doesn't matter. But like, they would have like 3 shrunk vices on a aluminum riser that they were like bolting down, like toe clamping down. And
Right.
it's like, well, we can't use a tool library, we can't do this because we're going so fast. And it's like, that I, I've heard
That's the
this
opposite.
argument. I've heard this argument a lot, actually, though. It's like, I can't probe because we're doing prototyping. I can't use a tool setter because we're prototyping. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know? It's
Yeah.
it's like it's this weird like counterintuitive logic of like, well, everything it's this special snowflake thing that you and I have both ran into, which is like everybody wants to be so special so bad. What we're doing is so different. It's like, brother, you're making like Rocket Labs parts or fucking intuitive surgical parts. Like there are so many fucking companies, machine shops around the country doing probably these exact same fucking parts. Like you're not that unique. Like there's so many DVFs, there's so many Metzers, there's so many UMCs, whatever, whatever. It's like nothing that almost like like there are people out there that are doing really unique shit like cutting like pure moly or like fucking cutting uranium or whatever, you know.
Hmm.
Like that's unique, that's different. But like if you're just making like applied material semiconductor parts or fucking rocket lab brackets or whatever, it's like there's no reason to not have a tool library. And just like try and squeeze shit into stuff. It's like, oh, we're always behind. It takes so long to do setups. Just do it. Just do like, just keep the shit built up. Like, oh, it's like, well, on this part we needed an 8-inch long, and on this one we needed a 6. Just use the 8. You know, for both. Like, you don't have to
Right.
pull it out and use the same tool number. Like,
Right.
you'll make compromises on your cutting, but you'll improve your throughput because it's like, well, I know the 8-inch one cuts like this, so I can apply that to this part, even though it's not like an optimal cutting situation. I can get onto the machine faster and off of the machine faster, so my throughput will be better because my first pass yield should be better.
I think that there's an important point there. And Uriel talks about this in incremental a lot, but like when you're coming up with a tool library, that tool library does not have to solve 100% of your problems.
No.
And so just start could mean like, listen, man, once a day you're going to enter 2 tools into this library, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in a month you'll have 20 or 30 or 60 tools. And all of a sudden, like the tools you're entering will be the ones you naturally use the most. And incrementally over time, your effort into building tools will go down. But that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that every tool you use has to come from your library. If
Right.
for some reason you need that 8-inch tool on a random job, just build it, program it in like you're doing it now, and you've lost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also on top of that, you hit on another important subject that I think is critical, which is that a lot of times people associate building a tool library with coming up with more standardization in their shop,
Right.
and they're very clearly related, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you could ask very question, well, if I'm going to build a tool library, I should decide like how many different 1/4 inch end mills I'm going to have and what kind of stickouts I'm going to have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say like my mental model there has shifted a little bit to like I think I would argue like you should have a 3XD one and a 10XD one, and if you
Mm-hmm.
really need something in between, you'll figure that out.
Right.
But like you can get a 10XD one that it won't cut like crazy fast, but it'll cut,
Yeah.
and you can use it. Or
Yeah.
maybe you could argue like you should have a 3XD one, a 5XD one, and a 10XD one.
Right. I typically like my if I'm doing two, like this is where we started with, I don't know where they're at now, but like where we started with
Hmm.
10 with Senko Senda's like standard tool it was 4XD, and then the
Sure.
long one was just like something necked, like the longest necked version that we could get essentially.
Right. Yeah. So
So
like
even
10 or
like you
12XD or
yeah,
something.
so you start on like a somewhat compromised state already of like 4XD
Hmm.
is not necessarily, I mean, that's kind of like in your golden ratio type of
Right.
situation, but it like will encompass quite a bit of tools and then anything beyond that. And it's like, do you need somewhere in between? I mean, maybe like, but realistically, like, why? You know, like, unless you're finding like, oh, I don't even know how you would. I mean, off the cuff, I don't know how you would track that necessarily. But like at the end of the day, if like when we were doing this shit in Arizona, like the guy was we programmed a part or they programmed a part, they got it on the machine and it was running, and it's like cool. I'm gonna go back and optimize it now. And I was like, why? Like, like, what's the point? You need like this machine needs to run. What the fuck are you optimizing it for? Like, just let it run. Move on to something else.
Right.
Where it's
Right. Right.
like
Right.
at the end of the day, if the 4XD and the 10XD or 12XD or whatever make good parts, then don't even think about the middle ground, you know? Like it just doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
I could argue. I mean I agree with you from certainly from like until you're running it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
until you are done, like until every part you need to make is done and proved out, like it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if you have to make 100 of something or 1,000 of something, and that 10xd quarter-inch end mill could be replaced with a 5xd one,
Right.
okay, sure, right? Like now you can cut a wall in one pass instead of four or something, and great,
Mm-hmm.
like go do it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I understand why people think about, oh, I need the right tool for the right job, and then that was the one guy who was like always wanted the tool to be as short as it possibly could.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the reality is that hurts your throughput. Like it
Mm-hmm.
hurts your ability to get the part on the machine, off the machine, and inspected.
Yeah.
And until you're able to make consistent parts, then you know good parts then fast parts, right? Like it
Yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
matter.
Yeah. And like we've had customers like we're like just trying to like table set expectations of like, well, what's the cycle time requirement? And they're like, right now it doesn't fucking matter. We just need to make the part and make it good and then we'll figure it out after that. And it's like,
Right.
cool. I like that they're like that is an atypical customer, I would say. But like
Hmm.
with these parts are like kind of crazy. Like there is nothing flat, like literally nothing flat on these like parts that are they're some aerospace casting thing. The
Hmm.
fixturing is wild. But it's like we would like it like this is what other people were doing, but like for right now, like because we're bringing this in house, we want it to be good, and then we can figure out from there. And that's like what it is. Like ultimately, even still, I think to the point of like making the good part and getting a baseline of like non-optimized cutting, but making good parts. And like if you have to make like 100, 1,000, whatever, then you can start like while it's running, always while it's running, go back and be like, I could order this tool or that tool or whatever and squeeze like 5, 10, 15 minutes out of this thing, whatever, and then I'll be much, much better off.
Okay, so let's just circle around and summarize what I think some of the conclusions that people can take away from this are so far.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't say conclusions from this because I don't think we really landed anywhere. Like I think other topics that we're gonna cover in individual episodes, is
I
where I would
I mean,
go. But
I
yeah,
think there are some high level points though that people can
yeah,
take away
sure,
from
sure,
it.
sure.
For instance, this one I think is really important. Don't get hung up on tool numbers.
Yeah,
That like there should be a unique ID for a tool that's independent of how you choose to number it on the machine.
right.
I think that's a pretty like general statement that I think we agree on.
Yeah,
Specifically because that frees you up to later on change the numbering however works at that moment.
yes,
And it gives you the ability to audit. Start small, build up the tool library small, but build it up, start somewhere.
hmm,
And then also, you need to make sure the tools that you build match the tool library and then
hmm,
leave them that way. Like don't adjust tool, 8862
hmm,
to make it, if you've adjusted the length, that's 8863 or 8864, right?
right, right.
And then the last thing I'll say is I think just because it doesn't like when you're using a unique ID for the tool, that ID really doesn't matter. So don't try to come up with a system that links those IDs to a tool type or something.
Yeah,
You're going to end up like running into an unexpected constraint there. So just
yeah.
let them be essentially sequential serial numbers for whatever tool gets built.
Yeah, the unexpected constraint is also kind of where I landed with the like floating tools at the front of your tool numbers instead of the end.
Right.
Because if you go from like a Haas to a Fanic to whatever, like 200 or like a Brother even, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
on some controls like 100 through 199 or like not
1 through
there,
99. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and
yeah, right.
like you go for you start like going like way big and then like you have only 200 tool like offsets on a Fanic or on a Haas, but you can have 1,000 on a Fanic and whatever. It's like if you have like tool one as your probe and like your floating tools are at the beginning, which sounds weird, it like kind of scales a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, the number doesn't matter. It just doesn't fucking matter.
Right, right. Okay, so the things that I think people need to commit to are the sort of sequential serial numbers for rotating assemblies,
Mhm.
and then the like treating that as like sacred. Like
Right.
you don't reuse a serial number ever. You don't You don't change the stick out on a tool and the same serial number. Come up with a numbering scheme that works for you. I think the idea of like coming up with floating tools at the beginning of your tool numbering is a great suggestion. Libraries should probably be at the very least machine specific or cell specific, right?
Yeah.
Don't try to make one library that's shared between, I mean, frankly, like even if you have two hosses, like a UMC and a VF4 or something,
Yeah.
unless they have the same RPM and are going to be literally sharing the tool, like make separate libraries, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So to me, that's like the big things is that unless you literally could, without changing anything in the library, pass the tool from one machine to another, then they should be separate libraries.
Yep.
Even if it's the same holder, the same pull stud, the same tool, if you're going to use it differently in the different machines, then it should be in a separate library.
Right. Because then you have like all kinds of, it just introduces all kinds of other issues.
Right. And then the last one is tool library should be considered correct geometry and correct cutting data.
Yep.
And I think that's one that people don't always, the last part that people don't always think about is like, okay, I should be keeping my cutting data in the library and reusing it.
Yeah, which like for certain cam systems is hard, right? But in Fusion, it's really easy. Like Mastercam sucks for this. And like that's like a whole different topic, you know? Like deep diving, but like you should have at the very least like a good baseline if like because Mastercam kind of only gives you one, but it's like whatever like I can apply this tool as it is to like any part and it won't cut efficiently on like and that was I mean I can think of the company that had a shitty tool library that didn't work, but it's like oh well I just applied the cutting data that was in the tool that you had built to the part and they're like oh yeah that's nothing, it doesn't do it, it doesn't mean anything. It's like why? You know.
Mastercam really only allows essentially one preset per tool. They have no way to store additional cutting data.
I don't think so. Not in an easy way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty
Okay.
insane. Yeah.
All right, let's shotgun a couple of topics, and then, like you said, we'll come back and do some follow-up episodes. Tool library as it relates to shop floor. We touched on this a few times, but basically, if it's in your library as a baseline assumption, it should either be physically built or in a small collection of tools that you are like rapidly able to construct.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, like standardized holders, collets, tools, everything's accessible, right?
Yeah, because like if that is not the case, then it shouldn't be in the library. Like that is a like if I can't like immediately go build the tool, then it shouldn't be in the library because that goes it completely defeats the purpose of the library and like what we're trying to accomplish, which is like getting parts on the machine quickly and off the machine quickly. If I can't go build it, then it shouldn't be fucking there. Like
So
period.
let's zoom into a real situation that I ran into in my shop here when thinking about this. So when I started out, I bought cheap holders off eBay, random holders, whatever I could get a deal on, right?
Yeah.
And so that's fine. You don't have to have a completely standardized set of tool holders
Nope.
as long as you're going to permanently build the tool and leave it there.
Right.
But let's say I have this one like rando long reach ER16 mini holder that I got off eBay. And it's being used for some tool already. If I build up something in my library using that holder, now I have to go find that holder, break down the other one. That's not going to work, right?
Right.
So for anything that's floating, that's where standardization starts to really come into effect. But don't feel like because you're building a tool library that you have to trash all your holders and standardize everything, ER16 or Power Grip or whatever. Build up whatever tools you actually have. Just commit to keeping these random holders as permanently built tools.
Yeah.
And as you go forward with floating tools and moving forward in the future, try harder to standardize.
Right. Or if you like decide on a system or whatever, then you start to like slowly like audit backwards. Like, okay, I changed all my roughing to side lock holders now instead of ERs. So now that's changed.
Right. But the key thing there is that just because you want to start doing a tool library doesn't mean you also have
Correct.
to make a massive
Yeah, it's
investment in holders at the same time.
yeah, it was the thing that we were talking about at the beginning, which is like that the holder is irrelevant to a certain extent as long as you have a
Correct.
digital twin.
Right. But circling back, the thing that can bite you is when you have like one random holder and 17 tools in your library built up with that holder. That's a
Right.
problem.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
So like one random holder with a specific tool that's always built up, fine. But like if you're doing any kind of like quick
Hmm.
change or like swapping tools, then standardization matters.
Right.
We talked about this before, but don't feel like you have to build the entire tool library all at once. And in fact, it's better to start small and like
Hmm.
live with it a little bit.
Yep.
So like a 5 or 10 or 20 tool library that hits like the most commonly used tools or even just your taps and drills is a great place to start.
Right.
How do you have any thoughts on like how you think about this? Comes up a lot. Okay, I've built my tool library, I put my 20 tools in, and it ties in with always be auditing a bit, but people then have a bunch of tools and they don't want, it's not reasonable to have, I mean, the Graham problem, I guess, to have like 10,000 holders or something.
Hmm.
So there has to be a limit to like what you can keep always built up. Have you seen any good processes or have any good advice for people just how to think about that? I think most shop owners have a good sense at like the 80% level of like, I use these tools a lot, or
Yeah.
I'll build this one and keep it built because it'll be pretty useful. But like beyond that, is there any consistent way or sort of thought process you've seen be successful?
No. No. I
Nothing.
like mostly because I haven't really ran into people that are have so many tools built up, you know? It's typically the
Hmm.
opposite problem. I would say like 90% of the time, or more than 90% of the time, the problem is just not having enough stuff, not having too
Right.
much. So we haven't, I can't say one way or the other. Like it would just be theory. Like, but I haven't seen anybody be like, oh, I have so much, I have too much standardization. This is so hard, you know? Like,
At scale, that can start to be a problem. Like if you have 50 machines and you're trying
mhm,
to standardize, then every time you want to graduate something to a standard, it costs you 50 times that. So
right. Well, that's
that can
where,
be like the lever effect. Yeah.
I mean, assuming that all 50 machines are have the same library, but that's kind of where like the
Right.
whole cell,
Right.
like if I have five 10 machine cells or 10 5 machine cells and three of them use this, then whatever. And that's where like you can kind of get into a like standard, non-standard, like do you have a tool built up for every machine, or do you have like does the cell have two of them and not five of them if it has five machines in it,
Oh man.
type of
I
situation?
wonder, I bet you there is. I wonder if like coolant soluble paint is a thing.
Um, yeah, probably. I mean,
Like probably just like cheap watercolor paint would work.
hmm.
Because like literally you could just like when you build up a tool, you could paint like a red dot on it or something.
Hmm.
And then like over time, if it gets used, the coolant will wash the paint off. And if it doesn't, you're going to find like, oh, this tool doesn't have paint. I can break it down.
Yeah, you would be surprised at how effective dust is for that.
Right. There you
You
go.
know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like the amount of shops that I've been in that do have like carts of tools that are tagged and have like shit on them, but like it's like that tool definitely hasn't moved in like over a year. Like
Right.
it's like, but we might, and it's like, well, it's the whole like 5S is like type of situation. Like you might do a lot of things, just fucking break it down.
Yeah, yeah. You shouldn't be afraid to break a tool down. You're building tools all the time. You can rebuild it if you hit the bingo and like the tool you broke down you now magically need tomorrow. You just build
Yeah,
it back up,
right.
and that's fine. That's totally fine. But also, I think that there's a good mental model for people to follow there because like there is some resistance to like okay, I don't want to buy more tool holders and leave things built up all the time. But then once you've started doing that and you're like, oh, I don't want to break this down because I might use it, like
Hmm.
that's an interesting mental switch.
Yeah.
And you have to find that happy medium there of like, look, I haven't used this tool in 6 months, so I'm going to break it down. And when I break it down, I'm going to take it out of my library because
Hmm.
now it's not in the library. Now it's not built. and I'll come back to it if I need it later, kind of thing.
Right.
Okay, and then I guess the last thing there is to think through just generally for any shop in particular. I don't think your tool library should have to encompass every piece of carbide in your shop. I think that's another sort of like trap people fall into. Like Devin has so many tools in that tool jar, and maybe that's really, really common. I've seen Dylan has like lots of tools. And for the most part, smaller shops at least can keep that inventory in their head or have some kind of inventory system. But that doesn't have to mirror what you have built up in your tool library.
Right.
And I think that's important to sort of limit people's scope and reduce the fear of setting up a tool library.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Some of it is
Cool.
like keyway cutters and shit like that. You might not use that like very often. So like, what's the point?
Right, right. And that's where standardization can help in the future, because even though it's not in your library, you know, okay, I just use this ER32 collet holder for everything random. And then you don't have to think about it, and you get everything quickly built up that way.
Yeah.
Okay. This was great. We should definitely keep going on this, but I think we should schedule our next episode's topic based on the amount of angry comments we get on this one.
Right. Sure.
Do you have a guess what the most controversial topic we raised here is?
Probably. I have a feeling it's gonna be the I number my tools like this, type of situation. That's the one that I think like really fires people up, and it's like everybody clearly thinks that their way is the best way, whatever, and it's like it's like, how does it scale? And I need a tool library for whatever, Proto Labs, blah blah blah. It's like, I don't know, man. If it works for you, it works for you. But like, I have a feeling that is going to be probably the topic there.
Okay. Well, we'll go into tool numbering theory in another episode for sure then. That's actually why I think the unique serialized ID is the most important, because your tool library should be able to support changes to your tool numbering scheme at the machine in the future if you needed to.
Yeah. Plethora did a very interesting thing where the tool library, I mean, because they like basically essentially had their own post processor, more or less. So like, and you only ever saw the unique number, and then as you posted, you would tell it like what machine you were going to post to, and then it would just give you the tool numbers based on that, which is like, that was pretty tight.
That's nice. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
There was
Never think about tool numbers again.
Yeah, there was a lot of interesting technology at Plethora that just kind of died because they were fucking dumb assholes. But what can you do?
All right. Well, I guess on that note, let's see what people think about our tool library theory, and we'll schedule the next episode soon.
Hell yeah.
Thanks, Zap.
Yeah, thank you.